Hello. Yeah, I'm just going to go through these questions here. So, yeah, hopefully I don't miss any. I'll say the question beforehand. So, the first one, what are your experiences in the field like? Um, Overall, I guess you like my experience of the film industry and kind of what yeah, my perception of it. It's a very competitive industry. It's very kind of hard to stand out with it as well. It's quite there's a lot to learn, and I think that's the one of the most interesting things about it. So when you're doing the job I am, which is like a producer director, there's so much scope and so much you have to understand about the job to really be good at it. Unlike most things, for example, my background before getting into film was actually I was a data scientist, so I used to work for like a corporate energy company, and I was doing a lot of programming. And you're very centered on being quite mathematical and logical and learning computer code while you're doing it. And there's you can kind of sit on a computer and rarely interact with people whilst you're doing it. Whereas in this job, it's so diversified in terms of what you need to be good at and your skills, and there's so much which goes into filmmaking, and you've kind of to be good at the job and be a good director and producer, you have to understand that process right from the start to the end. So the start of the process is, obviously like coming up with the idea and the script writing stage of it, and that part is very very creative. You've got to have the kind of like perseverance to like keep going, being aware on what actually sells in the market and what people really want, and what has potential to be picked up and actually be commercial, because ultimately that is the what underlines everything here. Is all businesses and all studios, they're primarily motivated by money, and they want projects which will generate them money. So you need to kind of recognize what is going to lead to that, and what's actually feasible to produce and do well with. So from that outset all the way to directing, it's a very people focused job. When you're on set, you also need to be very kind of like driven and be able to put in a lot of hours, and it's quite, because it's very project focused, it's quite intense in those periods. And then the post production can become very technical, and you've got to be quite critical of everything you watch and being able to pinpoint and select what works in certain scenes from other people's projects and other people's movies. And why does a scene work, what have they done with the sound, what have they done with the scene and the dialogue itself, and then trying to incorporate that into your films. So that element of it is so broad, in the kind of work you can get involved in, but that's also what makes it really really interesting. Is you're not pigeonholed in one specific narrowed focus view of being like a just focusing completely on programming and tech. You can kind of go to this other route where you can be incredibly creative, you can work with people, you can also still have that logical mindset, you can learn about different subjects you're writing about. So that's probably my experience of it, and why I'm still doing it actually is, even though it is very competitive and it takes a lot of hard work, it's a hard industry, it's also one of I believe, the most fulfilling jobs you can have. In terms of challenges, yeah, I think the biggest challenge is when you start at any job in your career, and isn't exclusive to filmmaking. When I first started being a programmer, when I first started, I used to do risk analytics as well. And everyone else I've spoken to, whenever they start their job, they're always rubbish at it right at the start. No one is able to, on day one, be incredibly capable at their work. So they're going to make huge mistakes. They're going to make bad decisions. But that's something which is very challenging in film. Is that work then publicly gets displayed across the world sometimes, or you get put on YouTube, and you have to be able to be quite thick-skinned to allow that, receive the critique from people, and what's working, what's not working, and recognise when your work isn't up to a certain standard you want it to be, or you hoped it to be, and kind of critically analyze why that hasn't been the case and be able to just keep going. You've just got to kind of like keep persevering with it, even in the face of everyone not liking your work initially, because that will happen. Everyone who starts off at filmmaking, you know, they want to show people their short film, or they want to show people their first bit of work, and it likely won't be good. And the people who are watching it probably will be like it's not the most enjoyable thing for them to watch. But and you'll probably feel that a little bit when people are watching it. But the thing is that's your first attempt at doing it, and then your next attempt will be better, and then your next attempt after that will be better. And as you keep progressing and you keep with that kind of perseverance, you're going to get to a point where your films are becoming really enjoyable for people to watch. Whether that happens on your second film or your 10th attempt or whatever, eventually you will get there, because you'll start to, as long as you're trying to really understand and break down why it worked or why it didn't work, and kind of learn from your mistakes, then you will reach that point. And then that's when it becomes really fulfilling and it really pays back, because everything you've learned up to that point has resulted in people watching your film, and you can see the enjoyment at that point. Like my first films I've made, some of them aren't in, you won't even find them online at the moment, because I did put them all on VOD platforms and like straight to DVD, and they were all a lot of them were rubbish, so people wouldn't really want to watch it. They'd maybe watch the first 15 minutes and shut it off. My family wouldn't want to watch it, and they would just like pretend they wanted to get the DVD, and then they'd never watch it. But my latest ones, they do want to watch, and they're really excited about. So you've got to just be able to kind of like fight through that initial wall and that learning phase, in order to kind of get to that point. And that's a really, really hard thing for people to go through, because some people are very sensitive to criticism and are not able to make those steps, and then they'll kind of give up at that point and then go and do a different career path. But yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge with this, and that's probably what stops a lot of people actually making it onto that ladder. Oh, I didn't answer your second part of that question. How did I get past them? I'm very thick-skinned anyway. Like the amount of hate I got from my first Winnie the Pooh film I did was like astronomical. I had death threats. I had people blasting me over Instagram like constantly, but honestly I just didn't care, because I had that same mentality with it. It's like it literally just didn't bother me at all. I'm always kind of under the impression that it's like my next film is going to be better than my last film, and then my film after that is going to be better than this one. So if you don't like this one, then maybe it's in a couple of films time when you will start to like it. But you also have to be aware that, like, you know, no film gets 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, for example, or no film gets 10 out of 10. There's always people who dislike things, and you're never going to satisfy 100% of the population, and you need to be able to kind of come to terms with that and just be able to brush off those comments and not let it get to you. Thoughts on the film industry is just very, very competitive, very hard. You have to, it's a hard industry to navigate through as well, but it's, like I said, it's also very, very fulfilling, and I honestly think it's probably one of the most fun and creative jobs you can do out there. So if you can persevere through it and you can make it work and you can start making your own stuff, you will really enjoy it. And the other thing is, like, try not to just chase money with it and think, okay, I'm going to make this because I think it's going to earn a load of money. That might sound contradictory to what I said before when I was saying, you know, you've got to be aware what's going to sell and what's commercial and all this. You still need that mindset, but you've got to kind of also adapt it to something you really enjoy and what you really like doing. So, for example, with Pinocchio, the latest one I made, I believe doll films are very popular, and they have a good niche out there with Annabelle, and these other films have kind of proven that. And I like kind of campier, sillier horror. I don't like it when it's really like negative and dead serious. So I made a doll film because I believe that's what's going to be very commercial. And it's going to kind of make money and then allow me to make more films. But my spin on it is being very campy and being very, very silly and just having fun with it and not taking it too seriously. So I had a lot of enjoyment filming it that way. And I think that's given it a bit of a unique voice to it. I've not just tried to go down a kind of creepy puppet route like Annabelle. Yeah, I mostly chose to become a filmmaker because I wanted to do something which was very different to my last job. I was in that tech world, and I was doing all of that stuff and like data science for like and programming all that for up to about 10 years, and I just wanted to change in my life. I was kind of doing the same thing on repeat. The It wasn't really progressing massively, and I wanted to divert and just do something completely different and something really wacky, and just be a bit risky with it. So I just quit my job, started doing that in hope it would work out, and yeah, it did. So I'm looking at question five now. What is your creative process like? And how do you gather ideas for films and writing process? So yeah, sort of like how do I come up with my ideas, and then how do I develop those ideas? My first points of call really is you need to be aware of what constraints you're under and what sort of what sort of budget range you're looking at. So it's like, okay, I need to have limited locations because I don't have a huge amount of budget. So for you, it's probably going to be even more limited. It's probably one location. So you need to set something in one location. You need a small number of cast. You need for the genre, normally having a young female lead does better. So it's like, okay, I'll introduce that into there. And you kind of have this kind of like criteria of things to work through. Okay, I need the film to be kind of like 90 minutes, roughly. That's normally the aim of the film. And how do I make it kind of commercial? Maybe you've got a kind of masked villain or a kind of like slasher monster. So you've got one of your mates you've got a mate who's like 6.5 foot and he weighs 120 kilos or something like that. So it's like, okay, he would be perfect for that and he's willing to do it. So then you might steer it in that direction. Because I don't know, if you wanted to do what I was doing with a puppet, you might not have the means to do that because they're expensive. So you need to like figure out what you've got available to you, and what is possible for you to utilize, especially if you're not on a very small budget initially. But that still applies later on. Like right now, I'm writing scripts for some studios, as in like trying to pitch it and get it moving, and they have similar constraints. They'll go to me, like I'm meeting with one of them on Thursday, and they'll go, okay, someone in my position going on to look to direct a studio film, there are constraints, and they'll go, okay, I won't be able to do a £15 million film. I would be looking at a £3 to £5 million film, and therefore at a £3 to £5 million film, in their world, it has to still be quite constrained because of the union costs. So it would need to be 2 locations maximum, or like primarily set across 2 locations. You can't have big, stunt scenes. You have to have a few limited but really interesting set pieces. You need to have something which has a very strong hook to it. So I spoke to people from Sony, and they were like, their first objective really is like, when they're thinking about it, it's like, what is on the poster? Like, how is this going to get marketed? How is this going to get sold? So can you see the poster for the idea straight away? Can you do something a bit original with it? So for me with Pinocchio, it's like Pinocchio's on the poster. Like I can already see a creepy doll that will do really well. And then once I've kind of come up with all of these ideas, and I go, okay, this is like with Pinocchio, it's like, okay, a horror spin on Pinocchio. That's my concept. That's the hook. I can see the poster. And then my next process with that is, okay, what is the original story with it? So I was like looking for inspiration, what was done before, what can I subvert and change? So like the Jiminy Cricket character and the godmother, instead of being figures of nice figures which are leading him in the right direction, I thought, okay, so it would be a very interesting idea if they took him down the wrong path, and tried to steer him in the wrong direction. So I was looking for these kind of interesting ideas which might just pop in my head, and I go, okay, that would be a very cool moment to subvert. Or I might have an interesting moment for the Pinocchio character, like something which would be very, very memorable as a set piece. And all these ideas will start coming to me, and I'll start just jotting them all down, and creating this massive sheet of, or this PowerPoint of all these different ideas and these moments, and they are kind of stored there. But then on the other, I won't commit myself to a story at that point. It's just I allow these ideas to go down, and like different location ideas, and I see what's feasible. And then the next kind of stage is I'll be thinking about the characters, and I'll go, okay, so if I'm going down this route with Pinocchio's a kind of coming of age film of Pinocchio, and he's being steered in the wrong direction by the Jiminy Cricket and the Godmother character, what should my characters be in this world, and who is the best kind of like protagonist which will complement this story. So then I'll start thinking about, okay, in the original story of Pinocchio, the grandfather lost the son, and then he wished for the puppet to come alive, and that's why it came to life. And I thought, okay, well, I feel like that would be quite cheesy to do in a live action view, and a lot of other doll films, the way they work, and a lot of other films, the way they work, when you look at like Annabelle or, I don't know, Child's Play, the 2019 one, or the original Child's Play, or lots of them, the majority of the time they're a child who accompanies the doll, because then you can forgive the naivety of like, why are they not, why are they so believing in this magical entity and this strange character which has come to life, which an adult wouldn't do. So from that I was like, okay, I want to go down that route as well, similar to like Child's Play. I want it to be a young child who becomes best friends with Pinocchio as Pinocchio goes on this crazy crusade and gets led in the wrong direction. So I thought, okay, if it's a young child who's doing it, what if it's Geppetto's, initially I was like, what if it's Geppetto's son, and then therefore it was his brother who maybe died, but then Geppetto's quite an older character, so I was like, okay, I need to make it a granddad and a grandson, and then that's the route I went down. So I thought, okay, you've got a grandfather, a grandson, something's happened to his parents, so he's been adopted by his granddad. His granddad sees the loneliness and the sadness in his grandson, so he makes Pinocchio to accompany him. And then whilst they're becoming friends, Pinocchio goes on this crazy, gets twisted and is very naive about the world, goes crazy, and then his best friend, this young boy, tries to stop him. And then that's what led me in that kind of direction. But yeah, I'd say initially it's just like, to sum it up, is I initially focus on the marketing and the concept, and I want to come up with something which sounds really good in one sentence or two sentences. Like with Pinocchio, it would be something like a twisted coming of age of Pinocchio as he's, collecting body parts to become real. Instantly, that sounds very marketable to me. It sounds very interesting. If I was an audience member, I'd be like, okay, get it. I want to go and see that. It sounds fun. And then once I've got that, I'm like, okay, I've got a really good concept here. I've got a really good idea. I know it can sell. I know the commercial side's locked in. Then I'll start deep diving into, okay, what story can I try and get to work with this? Sometimes you'll have these concepts and then you'll try and make a story work and it just doesn't work. And then that's a sign that you need to try and come up with something else. But then when you're diving into the story, it's like, I will just allow these ideas. I'll just constantly be thinking about it. I will watch reference films out there, like other doll films, and I'll allow these ideas to kind of pop in my head, and then slowly these elements will start kind of taking shape, and ideas for the film will kind of start falling. I'll be like, okay, this would be a really good character in here. This would be a really good set piece here. I should do something similar to this. I'll do something similar to this film and introduce that element there, and then suddenly it's all kind of building out, and you're slowly shaping it. But I think you have to keep simplicity in mind as well. The plot needs to be interesting, and you need to do interesting things with it, but the core mechanic and the engine of the film needs to be simple. If it's complicated, people are just going to get lost, and they're not going to care. And they don't like complexity. There's lots of horror films which have done this, and they normally score bad. They're just like, too much stuff is going on. They don't get it. They just need something really, really, really simple, like Ouija. It's like that. The film Ouija is just a board. You touch it and you talk to the dead, or Talk to Me, the exact same. It's just a Ouija board, but in a hand form. You hold the hand and you can see dead people. And the rules are all established. You have to hold it for this amount of time, but if you hold it for too long, something stays. And if something stays, that starts essentially possessing you. It's like everyone really simply gets it in the film. There's no confusion, but amongst that simplicity, you start to introduce things which are really interesting, and you try and twist it, and you try and have these kind of turns. Do you have any particular inspirations? I I love all horror. I'm absolutely horror obsessed. I watch it every night. I'm watching one now. I go to see every horror film in the cinema, sometimes multiple times. My producer partner's actually gone out to watch Scream for the fifth time, Scream 7 right now in the cinema. So all horror films I just absorb basically. But the inspirations, I mean, I loved when I was growing up, I loved the 80s kind of style of horror. So, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacres, Jason, like with Friday the 13th, like Halloween. Like, to me, they're the most iconic characters. And they're the films I love the most. And like Chucky, and that's why my films, you can kind of see they've got those elements to it. It's, you know, I've even cast Robert Englund as the voice of the cricket. We've got Roger Jackson, the voice of Scream, being in Blood and Honey 3. It's like this is where our kind of like love for this area and this era of horror films has been kind of seeps into our films now. We like them to be very fun. I go to cinema with horror films, and I love the horror films which are the most energetic and they're the most entertaining, the most fun to watch. I don't like them as much when they're focused more on being negative and like a trauma background or grief or something like that. But yeah, then there's constantly amazing films coming out. Some recent ones I loved, Bring Her Back. That was amazing. 28 years later, Bone Temple. Sinners was really good as well. So yeah, just every horror film really. But we absorb all of that, but mostly all the 80s stuff. Any advice or tips? Yeah, you need to start like, you can either go down, I went down a different route to everyone else. A lot of people, they'll do short films, and then from the short films, take them to festivals, and then hopefully get spotted there and get funding to move up. I went completely against that system, and I did something really different. I started making films on £5,000, 10 grand, 15 grand. I found some of the distributors in the industry who made the cheapest films possible. They make them straight to like VOD and platform. You won't even have heard of some of these films which get made. They're just more of a conveyor belt process, but they were a budget to make something on. So just making cheap films like that, started making loads for about 15 grand. Must have made about 30 of them in 1 year, just to try and learn it as quickly as I could. And then after doing that, I moved on to bigger budgets. That went to like 50 grand, 70 grand. Winnie the Pooh blew up. Then it was like 250 grand, 500 grand. And now we're kind of looking at multi-millions. So I've got a very different path to the majority of people. And I don't know if this is a good path to recommend fully. I think you won't, if I stayed on that path of just churning out films and not caring about the quality, I wouldn't have been as good of a filmmaker. What's really helped me is thinking about the quality of the film as well. But so you have to balance the practical and the theory. You need to go out and you need to just make stuff, write a script, make it simple, make it very kind of like a horror character focused piece. Maybe it's someone like, I don't know, a monster represents or is a metaphor for dementia or cancer or something like that. Or you've got a mate who can make these kind of creepy dolls, and you've made something like Annabelle, like a kind of creepy porcelain doll. Use that and now try and shoot a film with like people after you wrote that script, and then assess it afterwards once you've done it. Sit there and go, what worked, what didn't work, and start to understand the craft a bit more, and then iterate and do it again. And what you've learned, repeat it and make the next one and make the next one. And that's where it becomes helpful, having someone who will release these films for you, even if it's for very little money, even if you're selling them for 10 grand, just to get them out the door, because then it gives you that process of repeating and learning. And eventually, after doing that so many times, you will become a really good filmmaker. And then when you are a really good filmmaker, you're going to get kind of spotted from people, and people are going to like your work, and it will kind of move up from there. But it takes a lot of perseverance. So balancing theory and balancing practical with theory, and with the theory side of it, critically analyze other films. That's massive. Like, just watch other films. There's like the masters of horror have their work on display for you to watch, or if it's not horror, a different thing, and you can easily just sit down, watch their work, and stop and start it. It's like, why is it working? Like, I don't know, James Wan is like the kind of master of jump scares, so you start watching Conjuring and Annabelle and his films, like The Nun and that, and see like, okay, what is he doing? Why is this working? What shots have they done? And like, break down the shots. Watch some, there's YouTube videos where people have done this, and you'll start to really absorb all of what is important, and then that will come with you when you get to the sets. I mean, my goal is always just to keep getting better and better. That's it. I just want to become a better filmmaker constantly. And some of that obviously goes in tandem with budgets. So it's like, I make a film, and this is how it's gone for me, is I've made a film on 5 grand, directed it, 15 grand, 30 grand, 70 grand, 250 grand, 500 grand. And now it's working to, 1 million plus. And it's like that, as you get better with it, is your budgets are going to get higher and higher if they're becoming commercial and they're making money. That's why it's really important to have that first step of like, you've got to make sure the film is commercial, which you're making. Because if you put all your heart and soul and all your work into something which people don't care about, and they're not interested in buying, well, they're not watching it. So they're not watching it, they're not making money, the company's not going to want you to do another one. So you have to kind of have this attitude of constantly bettering yourself with that mindset as well, and then your budgets will go up. And then, the longer you do this, the more you can keep persevering, and the more you keep on learning. It's like, really, you can just keep going up and up in budgets for, I don't know, until you're making studio level films, and then it's kind of up to you what you want to do from that point, and how far you want to go. But that's my goal anyway, is to start to, at the indie world and what I'm doing. I still want to do this. I have a lot of freedom in what I'm doing, but I do want to also direct for some studios and experience that a little bit, because it's hard doing what I'm doing, where I'm not only directing, I'm also producing, writing, editing, doing all this other stuff. It's hard to really just focus entirely on that. And also, directing a studio film is going to be way more than what I'm currently working on. It'll be 10 times more, so it'll be a big jump for me. So that's kind of where I'm aiming towards now. Anyway, I think that's all the questions, so hopefully it was helpful. Thanks.